It's your favorite comic book girl. At least I hope I am. And you guys know why we're here. We're here because you wonderful people helped me hit 100 subscribers. So of course, we're going to celebrate. And because all of you wonderful people helped get me to 100 subscribers, and actually, as of this video, I think it's 111 subscribers. So we're slowly growing to becoming the Comic Book Nation. But in celebration of hitting 100 subscribers, because you people are just amazing and lovely, and I just can't ever thank you enough, but you already know that, we're going to do a fun comic Q&A, because fun comic stuff. So welcome to the official 100 subscribers Q&A. But actually it's 111, but who's counting? But I have posted several spots for you lovely people to ask me questions, comic things, or just saying hi, or whatever it is that you want to use with that freedom. I have been asking you guys questions, and you guys have actually given me some really great ones, so I figured we're gonna answer them today. So the first question is from my girl, Cooper Kid Tony, and she asks, I know you're not a Harley fan, but how do you feel about Punchline? Thank you. I am not a Harley fan. However, Punchline, oh, this is going to sound really oxymoronic or whatever. I don't know. It's going to sound stupid. I really like Punchline. I think she's precious and she's adorable. And look at her. She's just really cute. And I want to take her away from the Joker. And I just think she's really cute. And that's it. That's all it boils down to.
I just think they're neat.
And it actually makes me sad because we should be having Punchline stuff now. But because Diamond Distributors right now is like wooey wonky, no Punchline. I have that gorgeous art germ waiting for me at the shop whenever we get comics back in, so I'm really excited about that. I know we don't really know anything about her, and I'm probably not even going to read her comics until it's collected in trade. However, I'm kind of hoping that Punchline is like this sort of, you know, I'm better than you Joker, and like pretends to be his girlfriend and then decides to just say screw you and do her own thing and like take over his empire. Also, if she could team up with Harley and they could become girlfriends, that would also be acceptable. So, One Swoon Donut over on Instagram, I love her by the way, asks, how important is the artwork to you? I actually think the artwork is pretty important, at least to me. So for me, first impressions are everything. So if I don't like the art of a book, I'm probably not going to read it. Bouncing off of that, I think covers are very important. I mean, 90% of the time when I'm picking up something, it's because I really, really like the cover. Maybe I find out I like it and then I add it to my pool. So I'm going to say yes, the art is very important for me. However, that being said, I have read a couple of books where the art hasn't actually been, you know, the greatest, or it's not really awesome or something that I normally would go to, but I still read it and then I find out that I actually really love the story. So I feel like art, for me at least, can go both ways. Yeah, I like my art in my comic books. Simple as that. Simple question. Good question. I like that question. Miller Times RU says, hi at that comic girl. Hello. Thank you for saying hi. This is me saying hi back. Hello. The Nerd Buster asks, how many books are you subscribed to right now? First of all, the Nerd Buster is really awesome and you should follow his channel. He does some really cool things. He's also really dope on Instagram, and I really like looking at all of his collections and toys and his little toy haul hunts. I really like them. So yeah, that's my shout out to the Nerd Buster today. I know I just did a what's on my comic pull list, but I'm trying to remember exactly how many I have on there. I want to say I have 13. That sounds like a good number. I have 13 comic books on my pull list. When all of this is over, I'm probably going to add more to my comic book pull list because I'm kind of going through weekly comic book withdrawal, and I'm really in a mood right now where I just want to add a million things to my comic book pool. So chances are it's going to be up to like 25 by the time this is all over. Also, if you want to see what's on my comic book pool, this is a shameless plug by the way, you should check out my comic book pull list video. It's very cute and it's one of my favorite videos that I've ever done. Now these next couple questions are from my girl Kate, and Kate gets the extra super special privilege of being able to ask me 1,000,001 questions because Kate is my first ever Patreon and I love her, and thank you Kate so much for believing in me and taking the chance to subscribe to my content. It really does mean the world to me. I know that I'm supposed to put your name at the end of my video, but considering you're my first ever Patreon, we're gonna give you a super special shout out. So I love you and thank you. So let's jump into Kate's questions. And Kate asked me some really good bangers. My first question is obvious. how did you get into comics? So I'm not going to try and pretend that I have been reading comics since I was a small child, because that is not the truth and I would be lying to you. That being said, I still loved comics per se. Like, I loved the characters. I always played with my brother's action figures. He had all of like the original Marvel Legends that had those really wacky Build-A-Figures. I remember we had this MODOK and we used to make armies and we would divide the action figures up and kind of just have them go to war with each other. There was also Pokemon in that war as well. So it was Pokemon and superheroes. I got into comics two ways. So I'll kind of elaborate on both. In 11th grade, my English teacher told me to read The Watchmen. He had this massive library in his, classroom, and he was like, hey, you kind of like nerdy things, and we would always connect on talking about things like Batman and the Batman movies when we would discuss literature. He's like, you should read this comic book. It's called The Watchmen. So he gave it to me and let me take it home. And I got sucked into that book. I loved the idea of it. I mean, just the big brainness of The Watchmen in general. But I also fell in love with the comic book medium. I immediately gave the book back, and then I rushed to Amazon, little baby Mars, and I bought Marvel Civil War and Batman Hush. And it kind of started the seed, it planted the seed of my love for comic books. I wouldn't really get into comic books per se until about 2 years later. I was living in college. I was living just outside of Philadelphia, and we used to take the train in, and there was this comic shop called Atomic City Comics, which is one of my favorite comic book shops for nostalgia reasons. There was a guy there, and he ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, and he literally taught me what comics to read. So he used to walk me through the shop, and we would talk about the type of things that I liked. He would give me a bunch of comics, and I would sit down and I would read them in the shop, because I was a broke college kid. I didn't have a whole lot of money. But when I did have money, I always went home with a stack of comics. And on the final day of me living in Philly, before I had to go back home from school, he actually sent me home with a stack about this big of comics. 90% of them were Batman, but he sent me home with a stack this big of comics. And I came home and I just fell in love with the comic book medium, and I ended up finding my own local comic book shops. And from there, I started my own local pool list. So Keo, if by any chance you're watching, thank you for getting me into comics. And I probably know more than you now. So yeah, that is my long quest into comic books. It sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is, I promise. Kate also asked, what's the first comic that got you hooked? And that would probably be The Watchmen. If I didn't read The Watchmen, I don't think I would have fallen in love with comics the way that I did. When we look at the comics that I started to read after that first initial push, it was DC. DC comics are what I fell in love with first and foremost. And then from there, I slowly fell into the indie comics medium. But DC comics will always and forever have a special place in my heart. As you can see behind me, 90% of the stuff on the walls is DC Comics. Have you ever read a comic that was life-changing, and why? Wow, that's a big one to answer. There are so many comics that have changed my life for different reasons. I've connected with a lot of comics. Red Sonja and Painkiller Jane I've connected with because I am queer, and those are two very queer characters that helped me kind of discover my own queerness and realize, that it's okay to be a bisexual woman. Definitely those two books played a lot. However, if we're talking about a book that sticks and resonates with me and changed my life, it has to be the Green Arrow series from Judd Winnick. Green Arrow, as you know, is my absolute favorite comic book male superhero ever, period. I love him. That is the OG husband among husbands. I love Green Arrow, and Judd Winnick's iteration on Green Arrow in particular is my absolute favorite because he structured a family for Green Arrow. He had Black Canary, he had Roy Harper, he had Mia Dearden, and he had Connor Hawke. Two characters of which I wish would come back, and I would literally sell my soul to DC Comics to just let them come back. That's just going to be a reoccurring theme, is me crying on camera what comics I want DC Comics to bring back until they finally do it. So in this Green Arrow run, there are several pivotal moments, and I'm not going to spoil it because at one point I really do want to do like an in-depth look to the Green Arrow series because it does have that much of an impact on my life. But there are moments in the book that just stick home with me. And one in particular is a moment in the Green Arrow book. Mia Dearden is diagnosed with having HIV. And everyone around her pretends that she's not pretends, but it's a natural reaction to want to coddle and care for this person that is actually dying from, at the time, I mean, it still is an incurable disease. And at the time when I started reading it, my grandmother actually went into the hospital and we didn't think that she was going to make it. And I visited her every day. and we would talk about just things that made me happy because she wanted a distraction from where she was. So a lot of the times we would talk about comics. One day I bought in a Green Arrow volume and I showed her the scene with Mia Dearden, and she's giving a speech to her entire school, and she says, "Look, I'm not dying. I'm still here. I'm living." That moment for me connected on, as you can see, I'm gonna cry, and I told myself it was gonna be a long while before you guys see me cry, but I am, as you know, a crybaby. That moment for me, I was able to connect with my grandmother, and it was like, okay, we're gonna fight this, we're gonna get through this. You're not dying, you're living. To end this on a happy note, my grandmother's fine. It has been 4 years and she is healthier than ever, and she told me she's not going anywhere for another 30 years till she's like 110. So shit. That Green Arrow series for me, like I said, there's a million moments in that series that hit me home. But that one in particular, if we want to get into detail, that's the one that hits me the hardest. Good question. And thanks for making me cry. If you could change one comic character's backstory, who would it be? I don't know if I would want to change anybody's backstory per se. So as you guys know, I really want to write comics one day. Like, that's my dream. My dream is to write comics, both indie and for DC, if I'm ever lucky enough. And one of the things that I always thought about was Black Canary, because Black Canary, Dinah Lance, really does not have a clear and precise origin story. Unlike a lot of other characters who have year one stories, she doesn't. So we've kind of gotten glimpses into her backstory. We know she trained with Wildcat. We know that her mother was a superhero. But other than that, we don't really get to see a lot into a younger Dinah and her steps into becoming a superhero. I don't want to necessarily change it, but I would love to be able to either see or create myself, if I would ever be so lucky. I would love to be able to see Dinah in her first footsteps into becoming a superhero and kind of see more in depth into her backstory before she became the woman that we really know in comics, because she really is one of the best comic book characters in the DC universe and in comics in general, and yet I feel like we don't really know a whole lot about her. So I don't want to change anything, I just want to do something about it. So the final question that I have today, and if you could change the ending of any comic, what would it be and why? And this is actually a hard one, because I don't think I've ever read a comic book where I have just been like, oh, I hated it, or oh, I wish there was more. You know, a lot of the comics that I've read have had pretty satisfying endings. So I honestly don't have an answer for this one, and it makes me feel like I'm kind of cheating the system a little bit. And I know for a fact that, you know, when I'm laying in bed 3 a.m, I'm going to be jolted awake and be like, you wanted to change that, didn't you? I don't have anything, and I feel bad. Like I said, I feel like I'm cheating the system. I'm cheating the system by not answering this question, but I, for the life of me, just cannot think of anything that I want to change. You could bring Saga away from hiatus. Let's do that. It's been like 2 years since Saga went on hiatus, and I guess that's technically an ending in some respects. So yeah, change that ending. Don't make it as sad. Don't make me cry as much, and bring it back. Show me what's happening, because it has been way too long without Saga, and I really miss Saga. I miss it. That's it. We did it. That is my 100 subscribers, 111 Q&A. We did it. I'm really excited. I still can't believe that I've gotten this far. Like, I'll be honest with you. Let me level with you guys for a second. Let me level. YouTube is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I always looked at it and I always got very intimidated by it, because A, I'm doing something that not a lot of people do, and B, I always felt weird about it. I just felt intimidated about doing YouTube. So I finally buckled down and found the nerve to do it back in October or November, I think. I finally did a YouTube channel. And while I was excited and I was passionate and I got such an amazing response from you guys, I was worried that I wasn't going to stick with it. And I was worried that maybe after a video or two, it would fall on the wayside and I would just kind of poof it out of existence. But the fact that we are pretty much, I think we're like 6 months, 7 months into it since I've started my channel, and I'm still making content, I'm still brainstorming content, and I've invested all of this money into this fancy equipment. You know, I'm really excited that and proud that I didn't just give this thing up, because I am the type of person that tends to give up passions and, you know, stray away from it. But we're here, we're talking about comics, we're going to continue talking about comics, and of course, I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!